Good morning, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining me again. I'll kind of dive into things in a minute or two, so just let everyone kind of tune in. As always, if you could please just say hi in the comments, and if you want to put a little note there from where you're tuning in from, that would be awesome. That way we can kind of see who is joining us today. And as always, if you have questions or comments, anything like that, pop them into the comments. And just so that you know, I do encourage people to work along. So if you want to do that, grab some materials. Today, we're going to be doing some cutting and some gluing, but we're going to be cutting with a craft knife, doing some windows, some doors, and some tunnels. So if you need to grab that stuff right now, and then we'll kind of dive into things in a minute or so. Yeah, somebody tuning in from the UK, so welcome Tracy and Nancy and Carissa and Brooke. I see Rain is on there as well, so welcome. So yes, I've got my coffee in hand as well because it's early morning here. Well, not early morning, but early enough. Okay, so today, like I said, we're going to be thinking about creating more interaction in the journal using doors and windows and tunnels. A lot of times when we think about books, we think about like, oh, you read a page, you flip the page, and even a lot of times when people do visual journals or art journals, it's kind of like, well, I do a 2-page spread, or I do 1 page, and then every page and every spread is kind of separate. And here lately, I've been really thinking about how we can make a journal more sort of a single piece, make it more of a visual narrative, visual and written narrative. So let me go ahead and flip over to my workspace, and then you can kind of take a look at that. So I've got my little Stillman and Burn journal that I've been working in, and I started this at the beginning of the month. And if you've been tuning in, you've probably seen where I have things like this, these little windows and such. And we've talked about how some of the stuff runs through it, but there are big windows that reveal. And so this one actually has a window here, but then there's a window through that page as well. So we're going to kind of dive into some of that. And that's really interesting to have these windows, because then this image, this tape transfer, which we'll do in a later session, a later live stream, shows through. It's not just on this page now it's on this page. And then a little bit of it shows through there as well. So creating these windows and these spaces where little bits and pieces can kind of show through. And I think that adds a whole new dimension to a book. So when you're reading a book, when you're writing a book, you're really thinking about, you're not really thinking about how pages interact, because the story just kind of flows from one page to another. But in visual terms, we really can start to play around. So I like this window. So it says thrive, but then whenever you flip it over, it says live. And actually that's cut, and it's a little window, and it almost says the word evil backwards. So I kind of like that. So we're going to kind of dive into some of that. So I'll flip back to some of these pages that I've been working on this week. And, so I might look for spaces in some of the things I've been doing. So I'm thinking like spaces like this would be really interesting, or sometimes shapes like this would be really cool to cut out. So that's kind of what we're going to focus on. So you're going to need your journal, and this works best in a journal so that you can get that interactivity. I've got a craft knife. A lot of people call these X-Acto knives, and this happens to be the X-Acto brand, but if you're looking for them online, you can look up hobby knife or craft knife. I've got some scraps of paper And we're going to use that to kind of create some things. Notice that they're rectangular, so little pieces of rectangular paper. It doesn't have to be colored, it can be just plain white. I've got a cutting mat, and I've got my glue stick because I am going to kind of glue some things in. So anyway, let's go ahead and let's start off with some kind of simple ideas. One simple idea to think about is to create a door or a flap of some sort is just to fold your paper. So I could fold it anyway, but any direction. I could fold it diagonally. I could fold it like this. It'd be hard to fold it up or down because it's bound right here. And this works really well with a hardbound book. It can work with a spiral bound book, but then the spiral's in the middle and always kind of gets in the way. So I can create some very instant interaction just by folding. Now I want to fold this, and if I fold it all the way in, sometimes it gets kind of tucked into where the two pages come together, and it's a little bit hard to unfold and whatnot. So just gonna fold this over. And so with this folded space, now I have these things that are interacting in different ways, and then this will unfold, and so all these spaces start to kind of interact in different ways. You could do that. You could flip to a blank page and start it from scratch. So all the techniques I'm going to share can either be done on pages where you already have stuff or done on some blank pages. I'll probably do things on where I already have some stuff, or I have some blank pages in between that I might add. So that's an easy way to kind of create a long, skinny kind of door or flap that people can open and close. Now we can be a little bit more specific with a door, and that is using some of this paper. And you could either use some blank paper, or if you have like blank greeting cards, or even if you get a greeting card from somebody and you're like, oh, I want to put that in my journal, that becomes a great way to kind of create a door. So I think I'm going to use this purple. It looks kind of blue on the video, but it is purple. So just by folding it, and then I have basically a card, a door that will open and close. So I can think about where I want to glue that. So maybe this is a good space. If I wanted to, I could trim it down. So you can make it big, you can make it little, but then all of a sudden I just have this little door that opens and closes. So all I need to do is to glue that in. So I take some scrap paper, that's what this paper is here, and I'm just going to keep the card folded, and I'm going to use my glue stick. For those of you that did not tune in the other day, this is an Oohoo glue stick. It's my favorite, but somebody brought up something that I never really thought about. They said that they live in a high desert area and it's very dry, and so glue stick doesn't really work all that great. Here in Virginia, where it's raining today, it doesn't get super dry, sometimes in the summer and sometimes in the fall, but not like it does in a desert area. So I really spread that with glue, and then I can take it and stick it in wherever I want to. And I kind of like how I'm gluing it in. So I've kind of glued it in backwards to what we might think. We always kind of think about, you know, things opening up like a normal book, but this all of a sudden has this little, you know, it kind of comes open and it extends out past the journal, which again kind of creates some interesting interactions with those different spaces. So anyway, so that's one way to do a door. Okay, so go ahead and show you a couple other ways that you could do doors, and then we'll get in, well, at least one other way to do a door, and then we'll get into some windows. So just kind of flipping through. I like to flip through. I jump around a lot. I don't tend to work on one page start to finish. So I'm just looking for a space to do a door. Maybe this is one where I do. So I want to do a door like this. All right, so what I do is I need to find a space where I can cut, and this is just sort of a circle shape, but we can do any kind of shape that we want. And so that's what I'm kind of looking for right now. So maybe I do want to start this one back here where I don't have anything going on. So, you know, I've skipped quite a few pages, so this seems like a good space to do that. And so what I want to do, maybe I'll go back a page. There we go. What I want to do is to cut, and maybe this time I'm not going to do a circle. Maybe I'll do part of a hexagon. I mean, I could do a rectangle or a square, but that gets a little bit boring. Let me close up my glue stick. So this is where I need my cutting mat. If you don't have a cutting mat, then a piece of cardboard will work. A piece of old magazine would work. Just something to protect your page. This is not super heavy mixed media paper, but it's a little bit thicker than regular drawing paper or printer paper. And the only problem is I can't get my cutting mat all the way in. And so that I'm going to have to be kind of careful as I do this. But just to kind of show you, I grab my craft knife, my X-Acto knife, and I'm thinking I want to have kind of 3 sides, and so that way when it opens up it will create an entire hexagon. If I wanted to, I could draw it with pencil, and unfortunately I forgot to grab a pencil, so I'm just going to wing it. And I don't want to get too near the top because then that really weakens this. So if I come down at least an inch, and in this one I can actually see the threads where the signatures are stitched together. And so if I take it and come down about an inch or inch and a half, and then I want to cut, so there's one side, and then maybe come down just a little bit more, and then cut. Now before I come down too far, I want to kind of do the same thing from down here like I did up here. So come up about an inch, and I want to try to keep that angle about the same. This is where drawing it kind of helps. That way you can make it exactly the size that you want. And just finish my cut. Okay, and then take that out. The only problem is that I have this space here where it doesn't quite, I want it to go all the way in to where that thread is, but I don't want it to cut the thread, and I don't want to cut through my other pages. So if I hold it up, and if I carefully take my knife, and if it's a sharp knife, I can kind of finish the cut without cutting through my other pages. Okay, and then I've got, it's hard to see, but once I lift this up, you can kind of see how I've got this little space now. So, you know, if I take a piece of paper, you can really see it now. So I've got this space that I can contend with, and I'll do that later. So anyway, I like doing it that way because then this whole door is kind of stuck into the middle of the page, and then I get these different interactions with that. I could actually do several pages in a row, and that might be interesting to have all these multiple doors that open and close. So those are 2 quick, easy ways to do doors. Let's talk about windows, and I think I'm going to just go right here because this is a perfect space. I like this because I started this the other day whenever we were talking about watercolor pencil, but I don't have anything back here to worry about. That's the thing when you go cutting through your paper, is that you need to pay attention to what's back here. So if I were working up here and I might go, oh, I want to cut these 2 rectangles out, what's on the back? Now there's not too much, but maybe there was something back here, so maybe that would make sense to cut that, but maybe there would be something there on the back that you didn't want to cut through. So that's why I kind of like to do windows a little bit early on in the stage of a page. You could do it at the very beginning. Now, what I can do is I'm going to do my 2 horizontal cuts and then do my 2 vertical, or I could do it the other way around. But that just allows me to kind of go in the same direction. Now, straight lines are easy to cut, and I'm trying to press hard enough where I go through the paper. And notice that I'm always kind of going away from me, and even whenever I'm dragging this way, I kind of, you can't see me, but I'm leaning kind of out of the way, because if I do slip, it's going to be harder to stab myself, but you never know. And then some people might say, oh, I want to have a really straight cut, and feel free to use a ruler, but just be careful, because I speak from experience that when you use a ruler, if you get a little bit too carried away, the knife can slip. And I've actually cut the side of my finger right here. I have a little scar, and I did it when I was a high school art teacher, and did it in the middle of the day and had to go to the hospital to get it looked at. So just be careful, because X-Acto knives, hobby knives, are very sharp. So anyway, now I have this window, and this will be perfect because I can think about, like, oh, maybe I have an image that I can glue here. Maybe I want to have a word that shows through here. So that's an easy way to kind of think about cutting a window. So I could sit here and cut windows all day, and I was looking at that one space that I think that was pretty good. So I might come back later. I don't need to do it right now, but I think I'm going to cut those out, and then I'll have this series, because again, there's not really much going on, and then it's going to reveal the map underneath, and that might be kind of interesting to do as well. And I'll show you one last kind of window idea. Last night I did writing, and so we're talking about doing some different writing, and you can use your writing, if I can find it. Here it is. So I did my writing, and then I highlighted some words, and then what I can do is I can cut out around. So I used metallic Sharpie, and we'll get into some of that later, but then I have the word, and here down on the word unfold, I actually cut it out and glued it to what was underneath. And what's really interesting is that this is a little door, so it tells you to unfold. I did not plan that. That just totally happened by chance, but it's really cool that it did happen. And so eventually I can put something in there, and then now the word unfold relates to this page, but then also relates to this page. So you could do that, and like I was showing you with that word thrive and live, that you can cut out stenciled letters as well. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about, so that's a window. I mean, windows are easy. You can do any shape. You can do circles, you can do squares, rectangles. Rectangles are easier. Squares are a little bit harder. I'll show you how I cut out a circle here in a minute. But related to a window is a tunnel. And so I wanted to show you this, and maybe you've seen it as I've been flipping through, but this is what I call a diminishing tunnel. So what is happening is that with each page, the window gets smaller and smaller and smaller, and so it kind of reveals, to this little window, and then you can, I don't know if you can see what that is, there's something there, and then when I open it up, it's actually a picture of me peeking through that little hole. So I kind of like that, and then when you flip it over this way, there's a little peek of what was underneath. So that's a diminishing tunnel, but I could cut a tunnel through 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 pages that are exactly the same size. I could do that. I don't do that too often. I like doing these diminishing tunnels. So that's what we're going to go to next. And what I want to do is find a space. I think this one might be something that I need to do out here where I have fewer pages, because I don't think I have. Let me look. That's the problem. It's like I always jump back and forth. See, all this stuff has things going on, and I want to go through like 4 or 5 different pages. Alright, so I am going to go here. I'm actually kind of getting close to the end. So I want to do a tunnel, and I'm going to do it diminishing. So I'm going to start off with a big shape. I'm going to do a circle, And let me grab a pencil real fast, because this I like to do so I can draw it. Okay. So I've got my pencil, and I'm going to do a circle. And you could stencil it, you could use a compass. I'm going to do it fairly big, but again, not so big that it's right near the edge of a page. That's going to make it weak. That's going to weaken a page. So I want to keep it, have a nice like inch or so on each side and some nice space. Okay, so cutting circles that's probably one of the hardest things to do, and I'll see if I can do it on the video here. It's a little bit, what I like to do is actually turn my book as much as I can. So if I turn my book and start like all the way over here, so I'm going to kind of be cutting upward. So then I can go about a quarter of the way and then leave my knife in and then turn my book. This is where having a small cutting mat comes in handy. So again, leaving my knife in the cut makes it easier and there I have my circle cut out. And then I can come back with an eraser, oops, if I had it, and erase the pencil marks. It's not really important right now, but now I have my circle. And what I want to do next is to draw a smaller circle. So I'm kind of going to use the bigger one as a guide and try to make it fairly even all the way around. Okay. And I don't know if you could see that line really well, but I just do the same thing. But this I'm going to turn that out of the way, pick up my cutting mat, and again do the same thing. Turn my book, keep my knife in the cut. Now with this small book, it is easy to turn it. If you're using a bigger book, then yeah, it might be, or a bigger cutting mat, it might be a little difficult to do that. So that's when, I will lift up my knife and kind of do it in multiple cuts. Okay. Okay, so now I've got 2 of them, and then I can do a third. What's interesting about this gives me sort of a target feel with doing the circles. So if I had a bigger book, I could still sort of move, or a bigger cutting mat, I could still move it a little bit, but I would cut it in maybe 2 or 3 sections. And so I can come all the way around. So I came about halfway. Don't try to go any further. Then I can come back over here. And if I can turn my book a little bit, that's going to make it easier. Oops. Alright, that circle did not come out too well. It's got a big bump on it. Oh well. But that's part of the process, right? So kind of accepting things as they are. So now I have 3 of them cut. And I can go in and I can do a 4th one. And this, I think this would be the last one. Okay, so I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 pages cut, and if I wanted to I could do another one, but I think I'll stop there for now. Now the only problem with doing it on these blank pages is if I go to work and I start painting, then I run the risk of getting paint on these underneath pages. So what I like to do, I always have little pieces of drawing paper around the studio, and this is just 6x9, so I can put this in, and then if I'm watercoloring I can just paint over top. Here, I'll show you. I got the watercolor right here. So if I'm watercoloring, let's use this orange, then I don't have to worry about being so neat. Now I do kind of try to drag my brush into the circle, because if I go out this way, pull out from the middle of the circle, I run the risk of the paint bleeding on the back of the page. So if I flip it over, so sometimes the paint will kind of go through onto the back, but that's a good way of protecting what's underneath. And what's nice is then I have this paper, and if I use it over and over again, then I end up with a piece of paper that I can glue in and use it as fodder. So I did that on a page up here somewhere, right here. So underneath there's like this painted paper with the red and the green, and there's even some yellow. That is a big piece of that paper, that 6x9 paper that I glued in. And then last night I did writing, and I did writing on the tracing paper. So then I ripped up the writing and I glued it down. So I ripped it up into tiny pieces, glued it down, but I glued it in backwards so you couldn't actually read it. And I like the texture that the words give. But you can still see that painted paper, and it was all from this kind of stuff. So that's a way to add some color really quickly and start to see the different layers in that tunnel. So but yeah, so those are some easy ways to start to create some interaction. So doors that open up, folds that open up, windows. Again, you can even have windows that go through multiple pages, doors that go through multiple pages. You could do tunnels. So that's just something to kind of think about, something to work on, and really thinking about that idea of interactivity and how the pages can connect and interconnect. And then your pages don't all have to be isolated from one another, and little bits and pieces can show through. So anyway, that kind of wraps it up for what I wanted to share with you today. So anyway, yeah, so that's just another thing to think about, another way to make your journaling very interactive. And it's a great way, like I said, to create that interaction and interplay. You get those little peaks and little bits of the other pages showing through, and so there's just a lot of really awesome possibility, and I've been really exploring that in this little book here, and I've been doing more of that in my big journal, in my daily journal as well. So anyway, that, like I said, that kind of wraps it up for today, but tune in tomorrow. I'm going to be back. It'll be in the evening, so 7 p.m. I think I'm going to change up. If you've looked on my website, I have a little space there for the live streaming. I have a schedule there, but as I've been working, I was like, oh, I forgot to add something. So tomorrow night, I'm going to focus on drawing and but not like realistic rendering, but using lines and shapes and kind of keeping up that interactivity in the journal. So that's what I'm going to be focusing on tomorrow night, and then that will take me until at least next week. So I'm looking right now to maybe wrap it up on Tuesday or Wednesday of next week. It depends if I add anything else, but yeah, so I really appreciate you being here. Let's see if anybody has any questions. So somebody said, better late than never. Remember, even if you didn't see all of the stream today, you can catch it on the videos. So it will be on the Facebook page, so the same page that you're watching it right now. And I am recording it to my computer so that I can post it on YouTube at some other time. So yeah, so thanks again so much. And if you've liked what you've seen, and if you're in a position to offer me a little bit of support, no longer a public school teacher, but a freelance artist that's been hit pretty hard with this situation that's going on. If you go to my website, in my shop, there is a live stream. I'll put it in the comments too, but any kind of support, $5, $10, whatever. I feel like I'm begging, but I just say that to everybody, to like go and support your local artists, musicians, writers. They've been hit really, really hard, and I think that's why a lot of people are turning to live streams and putting stuff out there. So, but I appreciate you being with me this morning and joining in, and hopefully you've been getting something out of it, and hopefully you've been motivated and inspired to work in your journal and try some new things. So as always, leave questions and comments, and share what you've been doing. So remember, there's the Journal Fodder Junkies online group on Facebook that I manage, and you can join that and share there, and I try to post some stuff in there as well. So anyway, so thanks again. Stay safe and happy creating.